My student lesson plan is a lesson for future teachers on accommodating students with learning disabilities and mental illnesses in the classroom. This is a subject that isn't talked about a lot and something that teachers aren't really trained on, so I think it's important information to have, considering the large amount of students that suffer with learning disabilities and mental illnesses. So why is it important to learn how to accommodate? Like I said, a large group of students suffer from learning disabilities and or mental illnesses. 1 in 5 students are diagnosed with a learning disability. However, most learning disabilities go undiagnosed. And 39% of students suffer from a mental illness. This picture just shows a list of common problems that teachers have when understanding learning disabilities and how to handle them. And I encourage you to look at the resource sheet that I provided at the end of the presentation because this goes into this in further detail. So what is a learning disability? Learning disabilities are disorders that affect the ability to understand or use spoken or written language, do mathematical calculations, coordinate movements, or direct attention. So it's anything that inhibits learning. Here are some more statistics, and then the most common learning disabilities that we're going to talk about are ADHD, which is actually also a mental illness, and then dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, auditory processing disorder, and language processing disorder. We're only going to go over a few of these just for the sake of time, but like I said previously, I encourage you to look on the research sheet that I provide in the end of the presentation so you can learn more about these. Make sure to pay attention to this part because we are going to do an activity where you have to identify different learning disabilities and their characteristics. So dyslexia is one of the more commonly known learning disabilities. It's characterized by difficulties with accurate and or fluent word recognition, by poor spelling and decoding abilities. Secondary consequences may include problems in reading comprehension and reduced reading experience that can impede growth of vocabulary and background knowledge. Dyscalculia is a condition that affects the ability to acquire arithmetical skills. Dyscalculic learners may have difficulty understanding simple number concepts, lack an intuitive grasp of numbers, and have problems learning numbers, facts, and procedures. So it inhibits your ability to understand and acquire arithmetical skills. Dysgraphia is characterized by the person having difficulty converting the sounds of language into written form. So it's not necessarily a hearing disorder, or it's not really related to auditory processing disorder. It's just having a hard time understanding sounds of language and grammar and such. So difficulty converting the sounds of language into written form, or knowing which alternate spelling to use for each sound. A person with dysgraphia may write their letters in reverse, have trouble recalling how letters are formed, or when to use lower or uppercase letters. And then auditory processing disorder. People with auditory processing disorder have a hard time hearing small sound differences in words. So someone may say, "Please raise your hand," and you might hear something like, "Please haze your plan," if you have APD. So it's not a problem with understanding the meaning, it's just how your brain hears and processes sound. So now we're going to move on to the activity. So since this is a virtual lesson plan, you can go ahead and pause after I read the situation and then brainstorm some ideas in your notebook, and we can discuss in the chat or whatever. So how can you accommodate a student with dyslexia in this situation? You are having students read an article during class time and plan to have a class discussion on the reading afterwards. So you can pause the recording and then brainstorm some ideas. So some of the ideas that I came up with to accommodate a dyslexic learner in this situation would be to provide an audiobook version or allow text-to-speech for students to listen to while they read. There are some great websites that you can do this for free. I think I linked some in the resource sheet. Providing a large text option can help because for a lot of people already it is hard to read smaller print, so this might help even more. And I would encourage volunteering, but don't call any student that you suspect or know might have dyslexia because they might not have had as much time to process everything. And something that I think is good in all cases is to make sure the parents have the resources used in class so they may go over them at home if needed. So for the next situation, how can you accommodate a student with auditory processing disorder? You are giving a lesson over PowerPoint and have 2 videos included that the students need to understand in order to complete the homework. So you can go ahead and pause and brainstorm some ideas. So auditory processing disorder is a disorder that inhibits how your brain processes and hears sound. So something that could help would be to record the lesson and post it online, or allow students to record it so then afterwards they could go back and pause and rewatch and maybe slow down the playback speed. Something else would be to provide links to the videos so students can rewatch them after class. For younger students, I would send material to the parents so they can review it with the student at home. And I would always try to include videos with subtitles and or slow the playback speed if the video is fast. Including subtitles can also help with students that are hard of hearing as well, and slowing the playback speed would definitely help too. So now we're going to move on to mental illness in adolescence. And since this is a little bit more commonly known, we aren't going to touch on it as much as learning disabilities. But the most commonly diagnosed mental illnesses in children ages 3 to 7 are ADHD, anxiety, behavior problems, and depression. Here are some facts. In 2016, a student concluded that 39% of students have at least one mental illness. The most commonly diagnosed mental illnesses in adolescents are ADHD, depression, anxiety disorders, and only 1/3 of adolescents with mental illness go to post-secondary education. Mental illness is often detected in schools, especially for kids that might not have the support system at home. And as teachers, we spend so much time with these kids that it is good to use that to pay attention to these things. So something that I thought would be important to include about accommodating students with learning disabilities and mental illnesses is understanding 504 IEP plans. These are formal plans that schools develop to give kids with mental and or physical disabilities the support they need in order to succeed and protect them against discrimination. 504 plans can go beyond K through 12 into college, whereas IEP plans are only valid in K through 12. So some students may have worked these out with their counselor or psychiatrist or doctors, and they may include things such as giving them extra time on tests for students with test anxiety. They may excuse them from certain things. They may say that they're excused from class at any time if they need to go to the nurse's office, and maybe giving them extra time on assignments because they are dealing with all of this extra stuff that they shouldn't have to. So I included a lot in the resource sheet, so it would be great if you all would go and look at that. So if you just want to spend the last minute going and looking at this, I will put a link. I included more information on learning disabilities, ways to accommodate students with learning disabilities. This Natural Readers website is a great website because it is for the text-to-speech option, and you can provide that for your students. And then this is a little bit on accommodating students with mental illnesses and understanding students' struggles with mental illnesses. And I think it touched on a lot of great things to get you to understand all of the things that they're dealing with, especially like difficulty with medication side effects, because a lot of times they are experimenting with different medications for their mental illness, and they have a lot of side effects. And it just goes into a lot of other things that I think are important to understand as teachers. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you learned something that can improve your teaching in the future and help your classroom environment. Please give me some feedback. What could I improve on? What did you like? And yeah, thank you so much.